Hey fellas, getting ready to paint the B25, and I've got my black base on, and like I said in my last video, I'm going to go over this with do a natural metal finish. It's got a natural metal finish on the bottom and then olive drab on the top. But what I'm going to do is I'll do the natural metal finish on the entire plane. That way I can do some chipping. Now, if you can see it here, it's not, I've got a, it's almost like a semi-gloss finish. I used Mr. Color GX2, which is a gloss black, but because I didn't sand out and smooth out the primer, it's almost like a semi-gloss type sheen on it, which is fine because I'm gonna probably overcoat it with a flat clear coat at the end, because I'm gonna make this weathered, so I don't really need it to be that shiny. But I think this will give it a kind of the aluminum appearance that I'm looking for, at least on the bottom. And then on the top, it's not that big a deal at all. So what I'm gonna do, I haven't quite figured out the exact colors that I'm gonna use for the natural metal finish. Probably a high shine alclad, and then I'll go over each panel line with a maybe an aluminum color, and then go over it with another high shine finish. I saw that Duke's Models did this plane, and that's kind of the way they did it. So I'm gonna get to work on that. I'll show a little bit of the spray painting, but I'm not gonna bore you with the entire plane, because it's gonna take me probably a couple hours to paint it. So, all right, now we're getting ready to paint. I've got my alclad. What I'm going to do for the part of the natural metal finish on the bottom that's going to remain natural metal finish, I'm first going to spray it with Airframe Aluminum. And what this does, it's pretty transparent. So I'm going to spray a light coat, and that's going to give it a sheen, but it's also going to let the black show through. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretty much try to stay in the panels with this AK aluminum. And the reason I'm using this instead of alclad aluminum is because I've used this a lot and I know how it works, and that's what I use to test the masking fluid. So I know masking fluid doesn't affect this, so I know I'm going to be safe using this as the main color. So I'm going to pour some of this into my airbrush. Let me get my, I've got the window open. I'm not going to turn on the booth, but I got the air open. I'm going to put on a respirator and get the painting. Now, I'm not going to use the alclad on the top because that's going to be covered with the olive drab, and basically I just want some aluminum showing. So I'm not going to have to go full bore and do all the things I would do with the natural metal finish. I don't want to use that airbrush on the top. So I'll be safe just spraying the top parts with my AK Extreme Metal. Some of that fell on my glove, so you can see how translucent that is. I'll probably burn through a lot of this, so this may not be the best idea in the world, but we're gonna do it. Now, as you can see, this is just a real thin layer to begin with of the airframe aluminum, and it's letting all that black show through. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up my AK aluminum, and I'm going to go over and get inside the panel lines, kind of do almost like a black basing technique, only with this aluminum finish. All right. Make sure that's good and shaken. It's a brand new bottle. Keep this pipette separate from the alclad when I don't think those are going to mix real well. Okay, before I put on my respirator, I'll do this piece first, just to show you how it's going to go, and then I'll do the rest of the model off the camera. Got my respirator on. Okay. Okay, so now you can see what we got. You can see how that the black's going to show through, and then when I get it all, when I get all the panels filled in, then what I'll do is I'll come back with the alclad airframe aluminum again, and I'll go over it again and blend it all in. Then I'll probably end up picking out some various panels and giving them different shades, maybe like a duraluminum, something like that, just to give it that, you can see that gives it a nice worn aluminum effect. Kind of patchy. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the plane, and then I'll show you what I'll be doing right after that. Hey fellas, I got the natural metal finish coated on the whole plane. As you can see, here's the underside of the wings. I took a couple different panels and sprayed them with duraluminum. So this is basically 3 coats. I got the base coat is going to be the alclad airframe aluminum. The second coat is the AK Extreme Metal aluminum, and you can kind of see the variation in the colors. And again, I didn't have an extremely smooth base coat on my black base. I coulda, shoulda, woulda maybe buffed that out and polished it, but I'm gonna put a dull coat over the bottom anyway, so I'm not real concerned about that. There's a lot more work than I think was necessary for the look that I was gonna go for. You can see I got I basically went inside the panel lines and did like almost like you would with black basing, just random squiggly marks, and I think it gives it that natural look. And then once I get some some washes, and I'll probably do some post shading with some sepia colors, some maybe some inks to give it a little more weathered look. But I got that done. The top, since the top is going to be olive drab, I just basically I didn't use any alclad on that. I just sprayed it with the aluminum and just a thin layer of aluminum so I can do my chipping. And I did that on the whole plane. Let's see, here's the entire plane, and I did the same thing on this. I just did a couple different random panels just to give it some variation. I did those in duraluminum. And I've got the bottom. And then all the other parts over here. Again, this is going to be all the parts that we're going to have olive drab on them. I just sprayed straight aluminum. I didn't bother with the alclads. Part of this is going to be bare metal finish, so I did the alclad and the AK Extreme aluminum on that. I think it turned out pretty well. The flaps, they're all base coated in Tamiya buff because these were fabric, and then I did some pre-shading with the dark brown, so they should appear to be a slightly lighter color than the rest of the metal. And so my next step is going to be, I'm going to mask off, let's see what I got here. Now this is the scheme I'm going to be doing, the bottoms up to, and this is all going to be bare metal finish right here. Let's see, they've got where the guns were removed, so I've got these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace those onto some frisket and cut those out, and then throw the frisket, mask those off on the side of the plane, so those will remain bare metal finish. Right alongside, probably, I don't know, right about in there. And then I will take my mask off, and I'm going to do some chipping. I'll probably chip a lot around the top, and then in some other areas and around the wings, probably right around here, along the edges, the front edges of the wings, and some other places. So I'm going to get that done. I will probably do that off camera and just show you where I masked off, and then I'll be ready for my olive drab. And I've kind of been tossing around it. Basically, I'm going to have to do a lot of post shading with the olive drab, since I've got, and normally I do black base, and I do a lot of my finishes with black basing. So we're going to do a lot of post shading this time, just to give it some variation. And I've been watching Will Patterson's video on the Accurate Miniatures B25 that he did, and he used some sponge technique on his, and I may try that. I don't know, we'll see when we get there. So that's where I'm at. These are the rings that go around the cowl. And what I've done, since on this plane, you can see they're black and white, black over white, and I had to align them up to make sure that I got because there are little tabs in here that fit into the cowl, and there are 3 of them, so they only fit in a certain way. So I had to line them up and make sure that I got them to where, and this is going to be the top, I had to make sure that I got them oriented correctly, and I'm pretty sure that I did that, and I did. So these were finished in natural metal, just like the rest of the plane. But what I did with these, and it's, the paint's so fragile, you can see some of it's already Oop, I moved the camera. Some of it's already chipped off when I peeled the tape. So what I did is I used the MIG scratches effects, and I put 2 coats of that over the natural metal and with a brush, and then I painted my Tamiya NATO black and white, and now I'm going to try to chip some of the paint. Now I've got my chipping brushes. These are all my weathering brushes. I'm looking for a specific one and I can't seem to find it. So it's probably not going to take a whole lot, because what I found that over this natural metal finish, that the paint's really fragile. I may end up using a lacquer thinner for the olive drab instead of the X20A, which I find to make it more fragile. So I used X20A on this. So I may not have even needed to use the chipping effects, but I did anyway. So I've got my water, just a little bit of water. And we'll see if we can just get some nice chipping around the front of this. I don't think it's going to take a whole lot. To get some natural chipping. You can see it's kind of coming up there. And the white's not going to show up as much, just because there's not a whole lot of contrast between the white and the aluminum finish underneath. What I've found is it's really easy to overdo it with this chipping effect. There's almost like a point where it goes from no chipping to all of a sudden the paint just flies off and you get huge chips. Now I found that more so with hairspray than this chipping fluid. I think this MIG stuff's a little more controllable than hairspray. But then again, that may have just been, you know, how much I put on. I usually put on 2 coats of the chipping fluid. Get one that's kind of drawn out. Okay. You can see that. The camera will focus. You can see how that's got some nice chipping there. All right, that looks good to me. I think I may go over this one. I kind of like the effect this one has. Kind of like the right around here. Kind of like that effect. So I'm going to try to get this one to similar. Come back with my toothpick. Just try to scratch, get in there underneath that paint. And I can come back with my wet brush and almost resize it and make it a little bigger. Kind of like that. So that's how I do the chipping with the chipping fluid. All right, fellas, this is the whole reason that I did the entire plane in natural metal finish. And I'm finding that I'm trying to keep myself from going overboard with the chipping. So we'll see how it all turns out. But I've got this wing done. I used the Mr. Hobby masking fluid, and you can see I've added it along the some of the panel lines where it would be worn more along where they would be walking, and along the wing edges. You can see that to give it that chipped appearance. I've done the fuselage, and it's drying. This stuff dries pretty quick. I've put a lot of it along here where the rear turret gunner would be firing, just in random places to show where the paint would chip. And you can kind of see right there, right here, where I used my frisket and I had traced where the guns would have been. That's all supposed to be natural metal finish. So my olive drab's going to come along, up along here, and then all over the top. So hopefully this is going to work out. It's the first time I've done chipping this way in any big scale like this. I might have done it a few times on a few little spots on my MAK kits, but this is the first time I've done it on a plane, especially an expensive kit like this. So I'm going to do this wing, and I'm going to do the same thing with this. So this stuff dries pretty quick, so I'm going to shake it up. It's pretty thick. One thing I found is if you put it on thick and wet, it'll tend to flatten out, kind of like PVA glue. But if you let it dry a little bit on your brush, you can get some sharp edges to it. So basically what I do is I shake it up. And this brush that they give you is pretty thick. So I'll take a little bit on a crappy brush, and I'll just go along where I want it, dab some on, and you want to kind of be random with it. Just in some random areas where it would be worn. We're going to come along here. And you can kind of glob it on where you want it and then play with it. And I'm just kind of following some of the rivet lines, some of the panel lines, where it might get worn a little bit more than other places. And hopefully, after I get the paint on, I can come in with a toothpick and add some more chips, or, you know, make some more hard lines. Because you got to kind of play with this. And as it dries, you can manipulate it, like I said, a little bit more. But if you leave a big glob on there, it's just going to flatten out. And my brush is pretty crappy and gloopy, and that's okay. Just want to get little random spots. And again, this is the first time I've done this, so I am definitely not an expert in chipping this way, or any way, actually. Hopefully the result will be worth all this work. It's already starting to dry, so I get this big gloopity gloop on my brush. Alright, I think that's probably all I'm going to do for that wing. And I'm going to go ahead and do the rest, maybe add a little bit more on some other parts, and I'll start spraying. All right, I've got the olive drab coat on it, and let's see there. What I did is I varied. I mixed the olive drab and I kind of got this from Will Pattison, is I added about 20% white to the olive drab. And this section right here was just the full-on olive drab, not diluted with white. But the rest of it was like 20% olive drab mixed with white, and then 40%. And then what I did is I took a sponge, and then I hit these areas to show that it would be a little more worn in those areas. And then I took the 20% white and 80% olive drab. I heavily diluted it, and then I just sprayed and tried to blend in all the paintwork, all the different colors. And I've got a really good patchy, worn paint job on it. Here's the other wing. You can see there. And I've still got the masking fluid on there, and I'll rip that off here in a minute. And then there's the fuselage, and I wanted it real patchy. The pictures that I've seen from World War II, the planes that have been out, they've got a real patchy, worn appearance, and that's kind of what I'm going for. I also did the sponge work right there as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we are going to peel off that masking fluid that I put on there earlier. We're going to see how this is going to work out. Okay, so I take my tape, start to peel it up. Tape. I'm gonna have to remember all the little places that I put this masking fluid, and it doesn't look like the tape's peeling up the paint. I used a leveling thinner, a lacquer thinner with this, so I was hoping it would be a little less fragile than the X20A stuff. Okay. And looks like that's so now I'm getting some chipping. Let's see if we can use a toothpick and kind of, cool, that looks like we can do that. So I can actually go around and use a toothpick and add a little bit more chipping. It might be a little work, but yeah, that'll work. So if I want to add more chipping, I can do that. It's going to work out beautifully, guys. Some smaller chips. All right. So I'm going to get to work on this, chipping the rest of this paint, and we'll come back when I get it all stripped and ready for the next step.